Okay, so it is the second weekend in May here in coastal Carolina, and it's time to open the pool. So first thing we're gonna do is grab the old trusty leaf blower and get all the petals and leaves and things that have collected just this week while I was out of town on the cover. Try to keep as much particulate out of the water as possible, but we're fully anticipating and expecting a tremendous amount of algae in the water, so this is going to be a project. Okay, now that we've got most of the tulip petals, leaves, pollen, other particulate all blown off the cover, it's time to get out the cover removal tool, which helps me pull the springed clips off of the bolts that are in the concrete that secures the cover. Then we'll carefully get the cover pulled off and into the grass. Inevitably it'll get wet again, so we'll have to leave it out in the grass and let it dry before we fold it up and stow it for the season. Okay, so we have our tool here. It's got this notch. The notch helps fit around the bolt. So you get in, give it a little twist, pop it off just like that. Okay, so we have the cover off, and as expected, there is a tremendous amount of algae. The water itself is actually pretty clear, so that's kind of a good sign. But of course, as soon as I start brushing and cleaning and getting this algae moving and get the pump going, it's going to cloud up the water something fierce. But we've got chemicals for that, so no worries. But we definitely have our work cut out for us. It's going to be a good solid week of pump running and treating with chemicals, skimming, vacuuming, all that good stuff. But the weather here is beautiful, and you know, gives me something to do. So anyway, not too bad. I wasn't sure what kind of wildlife we were going to have, but we've got just one little lizard swimming around, eating some of the spiders that are swimming. So hey, good start. Okay, so as you might suspect, I usually drain enough water out of the pool during the winter months to keep it below the skimmer line. I don't want water sitting in that skimmer box in case it freezes. Sometimes you can get a freeze day. Very uncommon here, but it does happen. So as a safeguard, I drain that water. But it also gives me an opportunity to reintroduce a lot of good clean water. So while I'm doing that, letting the water run, I'll go around and pull all the studs out of the decking where we hold the pool cover on, so that we don't have to worry about stubbing our toes. And then once the water line is up far enough, take it to the next step. So for shits and giggles, we're gonna test the water now, just so we have a baseline. So I use these test strips, which work pretty well. And they'll have a color code. They'll change colors pretty quick, and let me know what the situation is currently. Take the test strip out of the bottle, dip it in the water, about 10 seconds. Shake it off a little bit, and look at the colors. We're going to compare, see where we're at. So not surprisingly, the chlorine is completely absent, so we definitely will be adding some shock to kill all this algae. But right now the pH and the alkalinity is actually really good, which is strange. Didn't expect that. I've got a boatload of baking soda to introduce if I need to get the pH up. I also have some solution called pH down if I need to decrease it, but we'll keep monitoring it as the week goes on. So you can see where over the winter the water rose, and then I'd pump it back out, and it left kind of like a pollen line or just a water line on the liner. So while I'm waiting on the pool to fill up, I'm going to take my brush and go around and just get that scrubbed off all the way around. Okay, so I got 2 hoses filling the pool. We've got enough water, high enough in the skimmer level now. It's time to put our plugs back in our pump. Fill it with water to prime, and get the pump running. Okay, so we filled the filter box and some of the lines full of water to prime. We're going to go ahead and move our pump filter handle assembly to the filtration setting. We're going to turn on our GFCI breakers for the light and the pump. We're going to go over and turn on the manual pump. I want to make sure we pull prime. We've got both valves, one for the bottom and one for the skimmer box. They're open. You can start to see we're already drawing water out of the pool. Just as easy as that. We are on filter mode. Come out of the pool house and we verify we're getting water coming out of our jets. You can see now too, the sun's coming up a little more, hitting. The water is still pretty clear. Okay, so we're getting action. Still pumping more fresh water in. We're seeing water go into the skimmer box, which is good. That's going to start collecting a lot of the larger debris and algae. We'll have to clean that frequently over the next day or so until we get this pool exactly where we want it. Okay, so now it's time for the brushing, and I go down the sides and then across the bottom. I just get all that particulate moving in the water, and the pump will hopefully take care of a lot of it. Move it to the skimmer box, and like I said, we'll just have to be diligent and keep that skimmer box cleaned out and try to get as much of the algae out. And then this evening, closer to sundown, is when we'll introduce our pool shock, which will start killing all this algae, turning it white. And then we'll have to add some pool clarifier, because at some point the algae breaks down into such small pieces that even the sand filter won't catch it. Okay, as you can see now, I've done my first brushing, and you can clearly see the water is no longer clear. Definitely, I've moved all that algae up off the bottom and sides, and it is in the water. Now some of it will resettle, and one of the next steps will be to actually run the vacuum. Right now it would be almost useless to run the vacuum because the water's so murky that I can't see what I'm picking up or if I am picking anything up. So we'll let this pump turn the pull over a couple times, do another brush, a vacuum. Like I said, this evening when it gets closer to sundown, we'll introduce our shock. The reason you want to wait till close to sundown is sunlight just eats the chlorine, and so you waste a lot of your chlorine. And right now, at least in the United States, there is a chlorine shortage, so we want to make sure we utilize our chlorine the best we can. You'll also notice I'm still running the water. I'm going to fill it to a level that's higher than normal because I know that after a couple of these cycles, the pump is going to need to be back flushed. What that'll do is clean the sand filter and pump any dirt, particulate that's trapped in the sand filter out of the system altogether, and keep it running as efficient as possible. Okay, so it's starting to get later in the day, and I'm going to run a vacuum cycle here in just a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and dump this Super Shock. Never used this before, usually I just use chlorine, but it's supposed to kill bacteria, destroys algae, crystal clear results in 24 hours. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, dump that in there. I still might add a little bit of chlorine, and then yeah, see what we get. Okay, so we're starting to wind down day one of pool opening, and we've made a lot of progress. I have scrubbed the pool multiple times now. I ran one vacuum cycle, and we got the light on. The water's still milky. I did add a little bit of a super clarifier and 1 scoop of chlorine along with a bag of Super Shock. We're going to test the water here shortly just to see what our chemical levels are, but yeah, we're making some progress. It's hard to see, but there was a lot of particulate I've actually back flushed twice, and we'll probably do again tomorrow, and I'll show you that process. So we look at the pressure gauge. When normal pressure is 10 to 25 psi on the pressure gauge on the filter, which I replaced, had to replace that pressure gauge this year. It's a $6 pressure gauge, and it takes about 5 minutes to swap out. Not a big deal, but yeah, we're getting there. Okay, so we're on day 2 of opening the pool. You can see that the chemicals did their job last night. The pool is no longer green. We have nice clean water, well, almost clean. There's still some pockets of algae on the bottom that I have to get cleaned up. We'll continue to brush and vacuum manually, try to get as much out as we can and let the pump do its job. Check the chemical levels. The algae ate up almost all the chlorine, so we'll have to add some more chlorine tonight close to sundown. But yeah, making some good progress. So let the fun begin. As you can see, the pool is nice and clean and clear. Water temperature is just right at about 70, so it's still just a little too cool to take a dip, but now it's just all maintenance mode. So got us a nice cold draft land shark. Time to enjoy our pool.